Welcome to the collabs. And today you get to listen to the Jay Z of Bryant Park, John Zeitoun. John's journey is a compelling story of creativity and strategy. From his early days in theater, working with Disney Theatrical and the Public Theater, to his current role at Bryant Park Corporation, John has mastered the art of blending storytelling with strategic partnerships. His background in psychology also uniquely equips him to understand human behavior, which makes him a key player in creating meaningful collaboration at one of New York City's most iconic spaces. John, thank you for joining us today. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for having me and for that lovely introduction. Happy to chat with you this morning.
Amazing, amazing. So, John, just to kick things off, one of the first questions we ask every guest is, what excites you about this idea of collaboration?
Well, I think at our core as humans, if you take the business and work out of it, I think at our core, we're all yearning for and want to connect and collaborate with other humans. I think, you know, that's one of the reasons why we're here. That's one of the things that, for me personally, brings joy, both professionally and personally, to collaborate, to meet new people, to story tell, to forge those relationships, whether it's someone you've known for years or cultivating new relationships. And so the idea of getting to collaborate here at Bryant Park in the heart of Midtown Manhattan, working with the best of the best, when you think about brand partners, has been really gratifying and exciting. And there's so much we have going on here, programming wise, that we really work with everyone. It's a fun place to be if you like working with a variety of different partners or brands looking to activate or sponsor programs.
Wow. You said it all. Back in the day, many, many moons ago, I worked in finance. My office was at 53rd and 3rd. What I would do on many warm New York summer and spring days, I would actually work out of Bryant Park. And
Mm-hmm.
so this was back in 2011 through 2017. And, I worked in finance, so it was just also a great place to meet people, just really naturally and organically. And again, they worked within the enclave of that radius. And so you could always set up times to chat. And a lot of my good friends and relationships came from those office, I guess, remote working days
Mm-hmm.
pre COVID, to say the least. So, John, you started your career in the world of theater, which is really amazing, by the way. And you've worked with the Disney Theatrical Group and the Public Theater as well. Can you take us back to those early days and I guess, what lessons from that time still influence how you approach partnerships today?
Well, I'll take you back even further to help set up the story of how I wound up working in theater marketing and partnerships to begin with. And so, growing up, I had always been a singer. I loved performing. And I remember when I was in fifth grade, my mom took me to see Aida on Broadway. And it was one of those moments. It wasn't my first show, by the way. My first show was when I was much younger. And like many people, my first show was Cats. But I was too young. It was cool, but it kind of went over my head. But I distinctly and vividly remember seeing Aida at the Palace Theater. I remember it was later into fifth grade for me because growing up, our middle school would take every grade to see a show. And we were supposed to go see Aida earlier in the year, but that was the year that September 11th happened. And so everything was canceled, but my mom still wanted to kind of take me because she knew I really wanted to see it. And so that was the beginning, honestly, of the bug. I mean, I remember sitting on the edge of my seat, second row, center mezzanine at the Palace Theater on Broadway, and walking out on 47th and Broadway and just saying, what are we seeing next? And so from that moment on, I became infatuated with theater. I loved music from a young age. I was sort of a bit of an old soul. I grew
Hmm.
up with my dad playing, oldies like Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin. And so I've always loved music, but then theater came along, and um, that's all I wanted to do. And so growing up, I did the shows, I took voice lessons. I really grew up telling people when they would ask, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" I would always say, from middle school on, I want to go to Juilliard and be on Broadway. And that is what I wanted for a really long time until the reality started to sink in. And in high school, I was grateful for the experience of going and having some professional auditions. I went to the
Mm-hmm.
open casting call for Spring Awakening, which when I was in high school was, you know, one of the best shows ever. And so I went in for Spring Awakening, I went into some other open calls, and it was around that time that this documentary came out, which was really kind of like my life before that movie and after that movie. It was this fascinating documentary that I highly recommend for anyone interested or even remotely interested in theater called Every Little Step, which
Every little step.
documented the casting and production of the uh, previous Chorus Line revival.
Wow.
And it followed people from open call to final callback to it's you
Mm-hmm.
versus one other person, you versus two other people. And you just see these people getting so close and investing so much time into an experience. And then the
Mm-hmm.
experience, for whatever reason, doesn't work
Mm-hmm.
out.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember there was an actress who said something, I'm quoting along the lines of, I go into work every day and I ask myself, am I tall enough? Am I good enough? Am I what they want? And I realized after that documentary and after, albeit just a few experiences, that
Mm-hmm.
while I loved music and I loved theater, there were
Mm-hmm.
people who had been training way longer than me, who were way better than me. And I just think psychologically, I didn't have what it took to just endure the constant rejection and heartache and getting so close. And so this all happened right when I was, about to go to college. I had applied to college thinking I was going to double major in theater and something else. The something else was always a backup to kind of appease my parents, because the idea of spending all this money for college to then have a theater degree and then, maybe it works out, maybe it doesn't, wasn't exactly what either of us wanted. So in my search, I was looking at theater schools, and I went to this college in Allentown, Pennsylvania called Muhlenberg, and it was an amazing experience, and it was one of the few places that allowed people to double major in theater and something else. But
Mm-hmm.
the summer before my freshman year of college is when the documentary was seen and when I had 2 to 3 professional auditions in the city. And I kind
Mm-hmm.
of see that summer as kind of a
Mm-hmm.
summer of breakup with theater. Like, it was one of those things that I just remember being so heartbroken over it, and
Mm-hmm.
being on a bus back to New Jersey where I grew up from Port Authority, just feeling defeated because like I didn't even get seen for one thing, and going into these auditions where I clearly stood out like a sore thumb, not because I didn't have enough training, but I didn't look like everyone else in that room. You know,
Mm-hmm.
um, I'm Lebanese, and so ethnically, I've been a bit of an enigma because no one ever guesses that I'm Lebanese. I get a lot of different things, which is interesting. But everyone in that room was 6'2", lean, white, looked like a picture perfect, what you
Kendall.
would imagine, and I was like, all right, this is just not going to work out for a variety of reasons. So I went into college freshman year. I said, I want nothing to do with theater. It was a big part of my identity growing up, and this was a new start. And so I parted ways with it. Music, though, was still a big part of my life. I was okay parting with theater, but I still wanted to, you know, do music because singing is the part of theater that I loved. It wasn't the acting. I couldn't dance. It was really the song. And so I took
Right.
Intro to Psych, like many freshmen do, and
Mm-hmm.
first semester freshman year, thought it was really interesting. And the first 2 years of college, I actually thought I was going to go into clinical psychology. I really was laser focused on maybe going into child psychology. I grew up with a lot of cousins. I like helping people. Um, in my friend group, a lot of times, people will come to me and ask for my thoughts on things. And I don't know, I like being there for people. It then dawned on me that as much as I like helping people, there were two things that dissuaded me from that. The first was, in order to be a clinical psychologist, it would require a lot more schooling, which I didn't want to do. And secondly, as much as I love helping people, I didn't want to just listen to their problems all day long for the rest of my life. And so I then started to think about what else I could do. And so then I took a marketing class. And in that marketing class, there was a section on entertainment marketing. And I remember having a light bulb moment because one of the case studies that they gave in the class was Disney Theatrical Group. Flash forward to a year later, and I was interning there. And I thought to myself, wow, I guess I didn't really have to break up fully. I could still find a way to be involved in entertainment and in theater, but on the business and communication side of it, while having a stability, while not having to worry about constant rejection and aesthetics and talent in that sense, but I could still be involved in this wild industry. That's all I want to do. And I'm a very motivated person. When I set my mind to something and I commit, I'm laser focused, and that thing is manifested and it's going to happen. And I'm very ambitious in that regard. And so then I think, was just manifesting it and putting it into the universe. And, back to the question of collaborating, I took it to the next level and like built out my LinkedIn, started getting local internships in college, and wound up just cold adding people at organizations that I thought I would love to work at one day. Disney Theatrical was one of them. And so I would go on LinkedIn, I would find the company, I would sift through and identify people who had marketing titles and then send them a little note. And you'd be surprised how many people were willing to, even if nothing came of it, at least respond to my interest to kind of, hey, I'd love to learn more, tell me more about what you do. And I connected with a lot of people. I went on a lot of interviews. I really put myself out there. And the summer going into my senior year of college, I wound up landing the summer marketing associate internship at Disney Theatrical Group, which was a pinch me moment for many, many reasons. It was a phenomenal experience.
I
The
can
Disney
imagine.
Theatrical offices are on 42nd Street, right above the New Amsterdam Theater. And so there are these beautiful offices. And it was truly a life-changing summer for me because I got to do what I really wanted to do in a way that worked for me. And so, it was an internship, but I still have to say they were great at giving us the opportunity to collaborate and work closely with a lot of their leaders across different teams. At the time when I was there, the three Disney shows were The Lion King, Mary Poppins, Newsies, and they worked on this play called Peter and the Starcatcher. It was the summer that Newsies and Peter and the Starcatcher were nominated for Tony Awards. So it was an amazing experience. They wanted the interns to really have a holistic view of what is it like being here. And so there was one night where all of us took turns and we shadowed the company manager. There was another night where we shadowed the house manager. There was another night where we shadowed the stage manager at the Lion King, where you're sitting in the lighting booth watching these people call the show and being
Wow.
backstage and seeing, all the
That's awesome.
beautiful creative sets
Yeah.
and costumes. And I had to say, I am so grateful for that experience because that experience led me on to my first job out of college at Paper Mill, because Paper Mill and Disney had some type of a partnership because Paper Mill Playhouse, a regional theater in New Jersey, which won the Tony Award actually when I was there,
Nice.
actually was the
Congrats.
place where Newsies premiered before it went to Broadway. And they have since worked closely with Disney Theatrical on some, regional
Hmm.
productions, some of them with lives after, some of them not. But it all started really on 42nd Street at the New
Wow.
Amsterdam Theater, and now I'm just a little bit more east and still on 42nd Street.
that's that's an amazing story, and it's so relevant on so many levels. I have a ton of friends that are Lebanese. The Lebanese community is really global as well. Friends that are Lebanese Ghanaian and look just like you and grew up in Ghana, and doing amazing
Interesting.
work. Yeah, one good friend,
Yeah, no, there.
Tara. Yeah, I
It's
mean, it's
funny
just go ahead.
because there's a lot of Lebanese people, and then a lot of times you don't realize how many there are, and then you start hearing about it on a
Yeah.
smaller scale. But no, there are a lot of Lebanese people. We are a smaller community, but then people are
Mhm.
pleasantly surprised when you find out
Yeah.
there's more sprinkled among us.
Definitely. No, there's a few people, and as part of this show, what I love to do is, again, in the spirit of collaboration. You know how it is. We think, okay, well, I think John could meet this person, right? It's just this wiring, and so I'd love to connect you, and we'll discuss that post show because he's doing some amazing work and has some amazing spaces and entertainment things that he's doing as well. But when you think about
Mm-hmm.
this amazing story and then you transition from theater, right, to public spaces with Bryant Park, how did that, I guess, shape your understanding of collaboration coming from, okay, I no longer believe or feel that I can work in this as talent. I'm now working in the same space on the business side, right? You're pretty much the maestro now, right? You're conducting what's happening. How has that transition shaped what you do now at Bryant Park?
Well, one of the things I love about being at Bryant Park is as much as I still love entertainment and I love theater, that's not only what I do. I think I had reached the point in some of my previous roles where, there were great opportunities. I learned a ton, met nice people along the way, but it felt very niche to me. It was,
Hmm.
pitching the same types of things, working with the same small cohort of partners. And
Hmm.
what I love about being here at Bryant Park is we, of course, lean into the arts and culture, and we pride ourselves on being, Broadway's park, Broadway's backyard. We
Hmm.
just had Broadway and Bryant Park here last month. We're constantly
Amazing.
looking for ways to champion the arts, but at the same time, that's not all we do. So,
Hmm.
we've just ended our great Paramount Plus movie night season.
Correct.
We have Winter Village here at Bryant Park, which is, our ice skating rink and over 200 holiday shops and food and igloos. And so the diversity here has been really nice because you can collaborate in ways that I don't believe I was able to in just
Hmm.
a 100% theater or just a 100% entertainment role.
Hmm.
Because for all intents and purposes, Bryant Park is a canvas. And
Hmm.
we do host many brands here who want to be here for the foot traffic, for the impressions, for the visibility. And so
Hmm.
there's two main ways that we work with brands in Bryant Park. There's the traditional partnership route, which is
Hmm.
the work that I work the most on, just because it tends to be a bit more collaborative and you can volley conversations and build relationships in a way that I enjoy. That's your traditional sponsorship model of supporting a program that we do. We also have brands who just want to be here to host their activation. And so
Hmm.
they want to, be in Bryant Park because who wouldn't? I mean, we're this
I know.
beautiful oasis in the
I
heart of
know.
Midtown, away from the Times Square hustle and bustle, who work with us
Hmm.
and they just load in their activation. They have brand ambassadors, it's a consumer
Hmm.
engagement model, and then they load out. And while those
Hmm.
relationships are very important to us, um, we really need both the activations and the traditional partnerships
Hmm.
to allow us to continue to do what we do. And
So
so
it's
I enjoy getting to work on both formats. I think that there's collaboration and relationship building in both opportunities, I
Mhm.
think as a marketer, I tend to lean more into the partnerships because it's more of a
Mhm.
marketing promotional PR multi-pronged integrated strategy. Um,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
both happen all the time, and we're already getting ready for our winter village season to return again.
I can't wait for that. Well, this is good. This is good. And that's that has me thinking, right? So when we think about the alignment of the commerce and the arts, right, and that intersection, it's also in some cases, depending on industry, can be simply complex or neither. So when you think about these partnerships, these collaborations, how do you ensure that these partnerships essentially resonate and align with the values of your audience?
Well, other than getting to work with a lot of different partners here nationally, internationally, the best brand wise, one of the other reasons why I think working on partnerships at Bryant Park is so special for me is because we really do focus on quality versus quantity.
Hmm. Hmm.
There are places in New York City that would host anyone or would align with
Hmm.
anyone who has a budget. We
Hmm.
really pride ourselves on being tasteful in how we maneuver and build our partnerships because we
Hmm.
want Bryant Park to, at its core, be a park. We never
Hmm.
want the park to feel overly commercial. Everything has to be tasteful. We don't want the park to
Hmm.
be, a pop-up tent city where, everyone is bringing, brand
Yeah.
ambassadors and running around. Everything is neat. We have very
Hmm.
specific guidelines. You have to stay in your activation footprint, no wandering. Everything
Hmm.
is manicured to our standards, um, which allows us to get to work with a lot of brands who also align. How I approach partnerships and how I ensure that partners are set up for success from the beginning is by being honest, creative,
Hmm.
and collaborative up front. I think those are the top three things that I've
Hmm.
learned in my 11 plus years working in partnerships and in marketing and PR in general. We like to lay down our guidelines up
Hmm.
front because the worst thing that happens is, and this has happened, so I'm speaking from experience over the years, you're talking to a partner for weeks and you're excited, they're excited, and then you get too far down the path and then something is misaligned, and then all of that time, not to say it's wasted, but it's not used in the most productive way. And so
Hmm.
we're up front. What are your goals?
Hmm.
Why do you want to be here? How are you going to measure success?
Hmm.
What is your budget? Because, we are a premium destination. And so that
Yeah.
allows us to focus on, again, quality versus quantity.
Hmm.
We would rather have a few great program partners who align with our values, audience, and overall brand than
Hmm.
too many partners who are all over the place. I
Yeah.
think Paramount Plus is a terrific example of that. They were a partner that I brought in my first year. I've been here 3.5 years now. And they came
Amazing.
in as a
Congrats, by the
supporting
way.
partner. Yeah, they came in as a supporting partner that I pitched for movie nights, and they loved it. It's a great fit because our movie nights program is a series and a program of classic films. And when you think of
Hmm.
classic films, it doesn't get much better than Paramount. And so they loved the partnership. They loved all the out of home, promotional, earned media that they were able to get.
Hmm.
The next year, they renewed and elevated their partnership to a presenting
Nice.
partner. And then
Nice.
we have entered now a multi year title partnership deal with them
Amazing.
where it's Paramount Plus movie nights at Bryant Park. And they're more involved in our
Hmm.
collaboration,
Hmm.
our creative, our event, having more of a presence at our event, being
Hmm.
creative collaborators with us, them sharing ideas, us sharing ideas, meeting at
Hmm.
points which make the most sense for both.
Hmm.
So it's a matter of finding the brand that works best. Now, it's easier
Hmm.
said than done because there are so many brands throughout the year for various programs that I think would be a no brainer fit. But
Hmm.
unfortunately, it's not just are you the right fit brand wise? It then comes down to what type of budget are they working with? What other
Hmm.
priorities do they have? Have they already committed to their budget for this year? So a lot of my role and my conversations with partners might be a little bit longer lead. There are some
Hmm.
that are ready to move and we're going to do something in a month, but a lot of my relationships and meaningful collaborations have taken time. So you have to be patient along the way. Back to what makes it successful. I think all the things work together to build trust, and all the
Hmm.
things work best when both partners are just upfront and honest, because that, that that
Yeah,
it goes a
it
long
just
way,
works.
you know.
Yeah, trust works. It's really interesting, and I'll come back to a question on the budget tiers. I'm sure listeners may be
Mm-hmm.
interested. You never know who's listening, right? Who may be interested in saying, "Okay, wow, let's explore that." So we're going to transition into a really quick rapid fire session. This is a lot of fun. It's
Okay.
called collaboration versus transaction, right? And so
Okay.
essentially, what I'll do is I'll describe a scenario, and then you will tell the audience, is this a collaboration, a transaction, and why? And just food for thought, one of our other guests said, and you just kind of described this, a collaboration can also be a series of transactions over time, right? When you think about
Mm-hmm.
Paramount Plus, first one, transaction, second one, transaction, now again, third one, collaboration. So a series of transactions. Now that there's trust, you can essentially keep this thing going, multi-year partnership. So we'll kick it off with this one. So a brand sponsors a one-off event at Bryant Park, but is not involved in planning or execution. Is that more of a collaboration or a transaction?
Before I answer the question, I have to say, I actually have felt from the start, working with Paramount Plus specifically on movies, that it, from the beginning, was a collaboration. I think collaborations fuel creativity and interest. I think transactions are more, we want to host a pop up in a public space. You have the land. That's a transaction to me. I think
Okay.
partnerships across the board are more collaborations because there's so many layers to it that you have to work on. I mean, maybe the first year, I wouldn't say it's a transaction. I would say maybe the first year you enter a partnership, it's something new. You don't know how it's going to end. You don't know what
Correct.
their
Correct.
expectations are going to be. I see it more of a leap of faith in trying something new than
I
a
like that.
transaction.
I like that.
But because I feel like the word transaction, it feels very much like here's the money, give us the service, which
Yes.
is not really conducive. That's a media buy. You use
Mm-hmm.
Go do that with digital ads. Go do that with an
Correct.
out of home
Correct.
billboard. We're not like that at Bryant Park. We're
Mm-hmm.
not just a billboard for you to, project your graphic
Mm-hmm.
or throw your logo on. We have a lot of guidelines here because we
Mm-hmm.
manage Bryant Park on the city's behalf. So
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of stakeholders here that we need to make sure are following our guidelines. Not
Correct.
only by the city, the Parks Department, etc. So brands that come to us looking for transactions to just say we want our logo as big as possible, we want to do a takeover, we want this, we want that. Oftentimes, not, I won't say never, but oftentimes those usually aren't the right fit for us. And
Mm-hmm.
usually, I found, not always, they oftentimes might not have the budget to align with
Mm-hmm.
us in a more meaningful way. And so, I definitely don't like transactions. I
Mm-hmm.
definitely feel like it's a collaboration, even if it's a slow build.
Mm-hmm.
Starting a relationship from that place of curiosity and taking that leap is
Mm-hmm.
best, I think, for all. Because
I
again,
agree.
you have a
I
media
agree.
agency to go buy you, here's
Exactly.
$1,000, here's what you can retarget on Instagram. We're just not
Yeah.
that.
Exactly. No, I love that, right? Because to your point, there's so much insight we can learn, and then each industry is so different, and so it's just always interesting just learning how professionals are looking at their space, their lane, what works, the different stakeholders involved, the complexities involved, and so exactly that. I think this section is designed for this exact reason, exactly what you just did.
Mm-hmm.
These are scenarios that people go through every day, especially thinking about the creator economy and how that has blown up, and how there's this, I guess, assumption that all creators are making money, and it's become just, hey, pay me, I produce this, done, right? Versus thinking through, okay, how can this be meaningful to various communities? And so I just love the fact that we're able to really learn from experts like the Jay-Z of Bryant Park,
Mm-hmm.
and really just understand in these unique spaces, how can someone, a brand, collaborate with this meaningful space and create something that's memorable and unique, which is something that is timeless as well, you know?
Mm-hmm. And I
So,
and I will say too, the two main models of partnering with us at Bryant Park, the traditional partnership route or the host your activation route.
hmm
In either scenario, we want to collaborate. Neither
hmm
scenario should be a transaction because even if a brand just wants to be here for our location and pays us a site fee to put their pop-up photo activation here in the park, it's still a relationship because
hmm
those producers come back
hmm
year after year working with different clients. So it's not a transaction that it's just one and done. We want to
hmm
build relationships not only with brand partners, but our agency partners and external producers
hmm
are equally as important to us because they will come to us and they will put Bryant Park in front of their clients and recommend us as a premier
correct,
venue. Even
correct.
if they're not looking at it as closely to working with us to leverage our marketing
hmm
benefits, like partners will be
hmm
included in our e-newsletter and web and
hmm
social media. So even if they're not
hmm
as involved in the PR of it all as well, they're still
hmm
really important partners to us because um, we want them to come back. We want to make sure they're happy. We don't want them to feel like they pay us X amount for the Fountain Terrace and they come and go and we never hear from them again. We actually take the time, and something I tell my colleagues is take the time to just keep in touch, to build the relationship,
hmm
to ask, have a post mortem. What worked great
Yes.
this time? What can be
hmm
improved next time? Not just great to see you. You have our number. Reach out for the next event you want to host. It's just, it doesn't work that way for us.
Yeah.
It could work that way for other places across the country. I mean, I know
hmm
in New York City, there's many places you can go that are
hmm
transactions that,
mm
it's very much apply, here's your open lands, come and go,
Yeah. Yeah.
wish you the
It's not,
best.
yeah.
But that's
It's not
not
building
how
an
we like to
ecosystem.
operate. Fundamentally, that's not how I like to operate.
hmm hmm And that's the
But back,
nature of what I
but
find people in our space are.
yeah, it's all about working together and keeping in touch. I can't tell you how many people I met at one point who are with one company who now are at another company, and
hmm
it's
Yeah,
the power of connectivity,
exactly.
keeping in
And
touch,
you're top of
networking,
mind. You're
LinkedIn. I
top of
mean,
mind.
it's a matter of being there and being that person that people think of. But back to your first question. Sorry, I just long story
No, this
wanted
is
to
good,
explain
dude.
that I don't think we
Again,
do any type of transactional work. We aim to lead partner and collaboration forward.
no, I agree, and I think this is why you're the Jay-Z of Bryant Park, man. Again, audience, thank you for tuning in. You're listening to one of the best, and I love the insights. It's super helpful, especially as someone who has interacted with the park across many of my different career phases, from working in finance, and then having worked with TED, and then having worked in tech, and then the park still remains a staple. Every time I'm in New York or back in the U.S. and in New York, I make it a point to pass through. It's always just nostalgic and also exciting to see the new different activations and the new things happening as well. So kudos to you. Excited that we're even having this conversation. I never thought this would be possible, but again, shout out to LinkedIn, the power of LinkedIn, and here we are. So yeah, we'll just quickly, and that's actually great that you did that, because now these scenarios will make a lot of sense to the audience when you say collaboration versus transaction, because it's from a lens of what you would do versus what you would not do, if that makes
Mm-hmm.
sense, right? So the first one we pretty much covered. That would be something you would not do because it's a one-off event. There's no discussion of longevity. But again, I think it just also may depend on industry, right? Certain industries just operate differently than others. And I think in your space, just from what I've seen, it's about, again, keeping the organic nature and the ecosystem of that space. Another quick scenario. So, a seasonal pop up shop in Bryant Park with minimal interaction beyond just selling their product. Would that be a
Well,
transaction or collaboration in your perspective?
well, I'm going to answer it both ways. So, for those who
I
have been
love
to
that.
Winter Village, you will see over 200 holiday shops. Last
Hmm.
Winter Village, millions of people came through. Over 4
Hmm.
million people actually enjoyed time with us. We partner, we
Hmm.
collaborate with our friends at Urban Space to curate the market in
Amazing.
conjunction with us. So
Hmm.
anyone who wants to have a pop up shop at Winter Village, they go through our partners at Urban Space. There's a whole application
Hmm.
program. They curate it. Then the people who move forward have their pop up shop here.
Hmm.
Urban Space is a collaborator. Most of the pop up shop vendors are here for a transaction. So it's both.
Hmm. I love that. And this is also really, it's a good insight because, I think what you've also helped people see is how can you take a transaction and make it into a collaboration? Because I'm sure there's also that desire as well, especially for many small businesses, right? There is definitely the phase where initially it's about how do I sustain this thing and, thinking about money and growth. But even in that phase, it's about collaborating with your customers. What are some interesting things you can do beyond just selling them a product, to your point, to really create the ecosystem? Is it, a
Mm-hmm.
mailing list? Is it a newsletter? So someone buys something, there's a newsletter that essentially keeps them up to date, helps them build community amongst their customers even, right? So again, by being present at your Winter Village, for example, they sell 100 different things. They can then create community amongst these buyers, which is something that not many people are thinking. It's, it can be transactional, but again, in this age of community building, I know this personally. LinkedIn hired me at that time for that, and the amazing colleagues that are still there. It's about how do you take that and then build a community and collaborate, right? Which is what you've done so well. This was fun. This was fun. This was fun. I really enjoyed that. So we're going to dive into just the trends and the future of public spaces. And so I was curious around what are the trends that you're noticing in public space partnerships, especially post pandemic, the dreaded COVID-19 period. How did that affect you? And yeah, I guess what are the trends that you're seeing now that we're through that period of time?
Well, we're very fortunate that even during the pandemic, being outdoors, we were a place that people felt comfortable being. There were some COVID-19 protocols that have stayed. For
Hmm.
example, the Lodge, which is our Winter Village food and beverage hall, used to be
Hmm.
100% enclosed. And,
Mm.
it is now what we call an open air experience
Hmm.
where it is covered, but we do have some panels that do go up and down to allow for some
Hmm.
airflow. That's something that stayed. Even something like at Winter Village with skating, parts of the lace up where you would put your skates on or queuing to get your skates used to be indoors. It's open air now. And so
Hmm.
I think we've figured out a way for people to enjoy their time outdoors while also along the way engaging with brands and having meaningful experiences um, that go above just being in a park. I think
Hmm.
that the future of partnerships is really brands wanting to be where the people are and wanting to
Hmm.
be getting in front of as many eyeballs as possible, both in person and also whether it's AI or whether it's social or digital, finding a way for someone's experience to live on even after their time in a
Hmm.
public space. And so I do feel like we're going to see more tech integrations into experiential activations or partnerships
Hmm.
as a way for the experience to transcend. Um, because a lot of brands, whether it's here at Bryant Park or wherever, are paying a lot of money for
Hmm.
their experience. And I think that with the landscape being how it is, um, they need to make sure that their money is being as well spent as possible,
Hmm.
because budgets are getting tighter.
Hmm.
And if someone is investing X amount, they need to, even if they believe in it, they need to make the case to their CMO or their senior leadership that this was well spent. And how do you do that? You think outside the box and you think about
Hmm.
ways in which an experience can go further, I think.
I love that. I love that. And are you at liberty to share, I guess, what the range for partnership would be with the Bryant Park?
We have a range, and one of the things that a lot of new partners don't always get when they reach out to us or we reach out to them is we're not a place in New York City where we just do standard rate card pricing. We really
Hmm.
do, back to the collaboration and leading with collaboration, want to have a conversation to understand what our partners' goals, how can we help them, and then we tailor something specific to their needs.
Hmm.
I can't tell you how many times someone has reached out or a relationship that we have has reached out to us from working together in the past and said, we want to do this. And then in hearing more about their goals, we're kind of like, but that might be better than this. And so we
Hmm.
educate them and say, you know, why not, for example, come in for this program instead of that program if out of
Hmm.
home media is really what you're interested in? Because the program
Hmm.
you reached out about, yes, you can activate on site, but it doesn't have as much, print ads or digital ads or out of home
Hmm.
media throughout Midtown that another program could have.
Hmm.
So, long story short, we want to get to work with as many brands as possible. It is a range. In the summer, yoga is our most cost effective partnership.
Hmm.
And movie nights tends to be higher. The reason for that
Hmm.
is because there's a robust out of home and media campaign for
Hmm.
movie nights. And attendance wise, our last movie night, we've had over 10,000 people here. So it's just the
Wow,
sheer volume of people.
10,000 people.
Winter,
That's
winter,
amazing.
Winter Village is also a sliding scale. We have some programs that brands can partner on that are more cost effective than others. Obviously
Mhm.
taking over something like the Lodge Bar and Food Hall is going to be not the same as an igloo activation or a
Mhm.
theme
Mhm.
skate night. And so, really, we wanna hear what brands' goals are, and then we come back with a fleshed out proposal of with the budget you're working with, this is what we could do. This is what we
Mhm.
recommend for you to see as much value um, as possible.
I love that. This is good. And you talked about technology, which we're seeing with AR and AI and all these different elements around just, more of a blended approach between, I say, the URL, the online, and the IRL, right? The in-person experience
Mm-hmm.
as well, which is really interesting and powerful. So, what role I guess, are you seeing technology playing specifically when it comes to these partnerships, and how are brands evolving their approach, right? So you mentioned some iconic ones that are classics with, Paramount Plus. However, as we think through, you just mentioned virtual experience and augmented reality. Of course, if you may not be at liberty to share, I don't know if you are, but would love to just learn from that lens what you're seeing and how brands are embracing, AR, AI, and just more those experiences in public spaces, if at all.
Yeah, I'll say we haven't seen a whole lot on the AR AI side of it at Bryant Park. I think what we see the most here is how can brands expand digitally? So really creative things like if there's a photo activation happening, having the brand be there and having someone who's saying we can email you this photo, share it on social, or if you opt
Hmm.
in, um,
Hmm.
you know you can try a month free of this or
Hmm.
learn more about that. And so I think what we've seen is really brands wanting to tell the story more on social media,
Hmm.
especially because of the reach. It's pretty
Hmm.
easy
Yeah.
if you're sent something and you can just save and upload it. It doesn't take that
Hmm.
much time, and so I think that those are the things we've been seeing the most. But I wouldn't be surprised if down the road we're also learning and evolving in how we operate and how partnerships look and feel. Um, Even 10 plus years ago, partnerships looked different than they look right now.
Yeah.
It used to be that big brands would, out of goodwill or corporate social responsibility or community giving, write a check out of good faith. You're a good organization. We want to support you, while expecting some marketing or some access. But now it's just completely different. Now it's really a marketing initiative.
Hmm.
It's less just because this is coming from the goodness of our heart. I mean, it's not a grant. It's not institutional funding in that sense, coming from a foundation where they have money to do such things. It's really, we want to advertise, we want to market, we want to have people talking about our PR stunt. We want this
Yeah.
on social and in the media and digitally, and it's
Hmm.
it's an integrated approach. And so I think the best thing we can do is to stay up to date, see what other people in the industry are doing, learning
Hmm.
and getting ahead of some trends, and just being curious, really. That goes a long way because it's going to look different in a year, 5 years, 10 years from now.
Hmm.
What we're talking about now will likely still be there in a meaningful way, but I do believe as competition, as landscapes change, so will what
Yeah.
media and
Partnership.
partnerships.
Wow. John, this has been amazing. Amazing. I guess as we wrap up, do you have any final thoughts, questions, feedback, or even advice for people like yourself? You never know. There may be a theater kid who's thinking, wow, I never knew that was even possible. Anything to share?
I think that in order to be successful working in partnerships, you have to come at it as more than just a sales pitch. I think you need to lead with curiosity and with kindness and with collaboration,
Hmm.
because the people who are trying to just add people and immediately pitch are acting transactional. And I think
Hmm.
my experience has been those things don't aren't always the best, in
Hmm.
terms of the results you're looking for. Um,
Hmm. Hmm.
Instead of going to someone and right off the bat, saying we have this, it's X amount. Would you be interested? Starting a conversation from a place of curiosity.
Yeah.
Is New York City a priority market for you?
Hmm.
What other partners have you worked with that have been successful around here? How are you
Hmm.
measuring success? What
Hmm.
demographic are you trying to reach? Asking
Hmm.
those types of questions will then make your pitch so much stronger because you're
Hmm.
going to be able to integrate a lot of the learnings
Hmm.
into the sales piece of it. But starting
Hmm.
it as a sales partnership usually isn't how I like to start. I would say for people who are hoping to be in the New York City partnership landscape, um, really just meeting people and
Yeah.
networking and not being afraid to, add someone on LinkedIn, because you never know where it's going to land, right?
Yeah.
A little can go a long way. And there's going to be a lot of people who won't even respond or reject the invite. But I think there's a lot of people who would be more receptive than you might think. And so you have to just put in the hard work.
Hmm.
The I think I worked really hard and stayed laser focused in my 20s.
Hmm.
Um, and now I think a lot of that foundation work and relationship has paid off because of the people I've met along the way. And
Hmm.
some of them have moved on, some of them haven't. But, you know, it's a relationship industry. You
Yeah.
want someone when they ask, have you worked with X organization? Do you know so and so? You want the first thing that people
Hmm.
say to be positive. You want to be
Yes.
known as someone who's easy to work with, who's thoughtful, who's creative, because people want to work with good people, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So the easier
That's
you
it.
can make it for those people to accomplish their goals, and along the way, be a kind human and be a smart marketer. That I think is what oftentimes will yield return partnerships or return activations, is just that camaraderie.
Ladies and gentlemen, Jay-Z of Bryant Park. No, John, this was so much fun. This has been an incredible discussion, and truly, thank you for sharing your insights, your experience. I mean, I've learned so much just from this past hour, and I mean, I'm even more excited to be within the ecosystem of Bryant Park, just knowing all that you shared, and so I'm pretty sure our audience and listeners as well, especially many of these tourists that flock to New York with the upcoming winter village, I'm sure will be able to now understand more into what goes behind this. Because I think a lot of times too, you know, people, as you said, short attention span. So, we show up, we have an amazing experience, but then even the purpose behind this podcast is who are the brilliant minds behind this, right? Someone just gets an email invite, Paramount Plus movie night. That's a pretty cool idea. So being able to speak to the brilliant minds like you behind this is really exciting. So thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, no, thank you. I think my last thought I want to say is we've spent a lot of time in our discussion talking about relationships with external partners, with brands.
Hmm.
What I would also suggest to people who want to work in partnerships is it is as important to cultivate the internal stakeholder relationships as it
Right.
is with your brand partners, because everything you see in Bryant Park, and I can say this for some of my previous roles too,
Hmm.
partnerships is at its core an industry about collaboration. And the
Hmm.
collaboration goes well beyond the contract and the deal sheet of benefits, because even if something looks small, or even if you
Hmm.
pass by and you see something and you're like, that looks like an easy build, or that looks
Hmm.
turnkey, there are so many conversations from internal stakeholders. You need them to be your champions as much as you
Hmm.
need a brand partner to be your champion. For one
Hmm.
program, I am talking internally to at least 5 different teams, because
Hmm.
partnerships works with everyone. We're
Yes.
talking with graphics, we're talking with security, we're talking with
Hmm.
operations, we're talking to capital, we're
Hmm.
talking to everyone. And
Yeah.
so keep that in mind too. Don't focus
Hmm.
so much on, oh my gosh, I need to foster this relationship with Netflix, or I need to get back to AT&T, and you're so razzle dazzled by kind of
Hmm.
the allure of a big
Hmm.
corporate brand. They are all amazing, but the
Hmm.
way that you're going to execute as seamlessly as possible is by making sure your internal stakeholders are on your
Hmm.
side, are briefed in, feel like
Hmm.
they're part of the collaboration as well, as opposed to,
Hmm.
you never want anyone on
Hmm.
either end to feel like a transaction or I'm checking this piece off the box, because
Mm.
people want to feel included. I think we're bringing it back full circle. I think that's really why we're here.
Mhm.
We're here for human connection. We're here for collaboration across the board. It needs to lead with that.
Wow. John, this was breakfast for the day. Thank you. I'm out. I'm out
Thank
in
you for
LA,
thinking
so
of me.
this
And, now I'm
this
looking
was
forward
fun.
to seeing you in Bryant Park, and maybe giving you a
Yes,
little tour, and maybe pointing out
yes,
some of the things we've discussed here. And for all those
definitely.
listening, we hope that you'll enjoy us year round, and stop by the next time you are in New York, visiting, living, passing by. We're always here.
Amazing, amazing. Well, everyone, thank you so much, and stay tuned.
1, 2, 3. Everything feel empty without you. Don't want a blessing without